Hey guys, I'm Ryan Engler alongside Jake Mastbaum and Sam Aleinikoff. We're here in the Slope Studios. Last weekend, Cornell traveling to Princeton and Penn. Friday night against the Tigers, playing a tough game, a game that they lost by 17, but really not indicative of how close the contest really was leading up to the end in that final score. Saturday night, however, they go to Penn and are able to edge out the Quakers and sweep the season series. So really not a bad weekend for the Big Red, and I think certainly something that they can build on as they go into the last weekend of the season, which is the home weekend. They're hosting Brown and they're hosting Yale. So Friday night they're going to host Brown. This is a team that they beat when they traveled to Brown a couple of weeks ago, and a team that we certainly think that they're capable of beating again. What's it going to take for them to come out on top on Friday night?
Well, I think when you look at the last game, when Cornell was able to pick up their first Ivy League win at the Pizzatola Center in Providence, Brown really caught Cornell at the wrong time in that season. Cornell was desperate, coming off a loss where they were leading Yale by 10 with 2 minutes left. So Cornell was really desperate at the time, and I think you saw a Cornell team that came out and played their best basketball, one of their best games of the year, put up 91 points. That being said, Cornell has only improved since that time. Their interior scoring has gotten better with Mark Curry emerging. Josh Virginia and Eitan Chemerinsky have also played well in stretches. On the perimeter, they've gotten consistent scoring from Robleski and 11 assists last weekend against Penn, so you're seeing kind of the ball distribution. But since the time that Cornell and Brown met, Brown's also vastly improved. They've won 3 of their last 6, and that coincides with the return of Peter Sullivan, one of their top players who was out when Cornell last played them. He's been back for the last 4 games and scored in double figures in each of those games. They've also seen improved play from Adrian Williams, who's one of those guys in the Ivy League who can be as hot as anyone and as cold as anyone within the same season, even within the same weekend. He had 26 points the last Saturday night, and he's going to really be a factor for them as well. That being said, Cornell's just too much, I think, in my mind. The steps that they've taken, getting the balance that they've been able to find between the interior play and the perimeter play over the last few weeks, I really think they're going to be too much for Brown, and I look for Cornell to come away with the victory here.
Yeah, and it's a game it's at home. They're going to be playing in front of hopefully a decent crowd in the final weekend of the year, and we'll see about that. But given that it's at home, I think that you have to give Cornell the edge in that game. Saturday night, Cornell will be hosting Yale. We know what happened last time Cornell played Yale. They went to New Haven, played a very good game, had a significant lead in the waning minutes of that ball game, just couldn't close it out. It was a tough victory, but I'm sure it's a team for Courtney and the rest of the squad that they want redemption against. So Saturday night, it's senior night, it's the final game of the season. They know that. They're not going to the postseason. And it's a team that they can win. It's a team that they can beat. What do we think is going to happen?
Well, Ryan, you mentioned it right there. It's the last game of the season. It's senior night. Both teams aren't going to the NCAA tournament, so I think both teams are going to come out there and leave it all on the court. Both Yale and Cornell are coming into this weekend with some momentum. Cornell taking down Penn and Yale taking down Harvard. Obviously, Friday night's game can affect that momentum, but when you look at the Yale game, it starts and ends with Greg Mangano. I mean, this is exactly what I talked about last time when we previewed the Yale game. Mangano leading the league in blocks, leading the league in rebounds, and also tied for the league in points. A guy who could very easily win Player of the Year in the Ivy League, so Cornell's going to have their hands full with Mangano. Now, how do you stop Greg Mangano? I look at the game that Cornell played against Harvard in Ithaca as the blueprint for success for this game. In that game, Cornell really shut down, I don't want to say shut down, but limited Kyle Casey and Keith Wright. Those guys got their points, but weren't nearly as dominant as they were in the game against Cambridge. Cornell was beaten that game by the Harvard guards, by Brandon Curry and Christian Webster. I just don't believe that Yale has the players in the backcourt as talented as Harvard to be able to beat Cornell like that. So Cornell can employ a similar strategy, really halt the front court players of Jeremiah Kreisberg and Greg Mangano of Yale. That's how they're going to beat the Bulldogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just going to be an exciting game. Neither team really has anything to lose, and it's the last game of the Ivy League for both of those teams. And Jake, you mentioned Harvard, and you mentioned the fact that Yale beat them this past weekend, and because of that, it kind of throws a wrinkle in the rest of the Ivy League. At least changes things up a little bit. You have the 2 teams at the top of the league, Princeton and Harvard. Princeton currently at 10-1, Harvard at 10-2. Princeton playing 1 fewer game because of the way that the Penn-Princeton matchup works out. So that means that Princeton has 3 games left, Harvard has 2, and they play each other this weekend at Harvard. So what we want to try to figure out is, this is going to come down to the wire. They're going to play each other. What's going to happen in the Princeton-Harvard game this weekend? and who do we think is going to come away with the bid and go to the NCAA tournament when it's all said and done?
Well, when I look at this game, I just look at the matchups on the floor, and I think Harvard has more talent than Princeton on their squad. Princeton, in my mind, is a better team, and if you look at the course of the season, if they play a 3-game series, which I think will happen because I think Harvard comes away with the victory, then I think Princeton's kind of team play is the deciding factor, and they'll end up winning the third matchup between the two teams. I do think Harvard beats Princeton this weekend. I think there's a playoff, and when that happens, I think Princeton has a team to come away with a victory and get the tournament bid.
Sam, I hope you're right, because honestly, I would love to see a playoff. I haven't seen one in my time here at Cornell, and I think it would be incredibly exciting. But I think Princeton's going to win that matchup in Cambridge. Both teams are extremely talented. You could get into which one's more talented or who has the advantage in this position. But for me, it boils down to one thing, a sense of urgency. The Princeton players, Kareem Maddox and Gavin Vrades, are both seniors. This is their last chance to do it. You saw what the sense of urgency meant for Cornell last year with all the seniors on that squad. Harvard, no seniors on that roster. Everyone's coming back. They're going to have another chance to do it. Harvard may very well win because they're a talented team, but I'm going with Princeton.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. It's always exciting when you have, especially with the Ivy League when there's no conference tournament, these games, especially in the last weekend, are just so critically important that it just means you're more likely to see a higher quality of play. Well, there you have it, guys. That was this week's preview on Slope Sports of the Cornell men's basketball team. This weekend, Cornell is going to be hosting Brown on Friday night, Yale on Saturday night for Senior Week. We're going to be covering both of those games. You can follow us on Twitter at SlopeTV Sports. Hope you guys tune in, and thanks for watching.